This channel and video is sponsored by Ratchet Clothing, a company out of the UK. I'll put a link in the description down below. Go check out their many collections. Today I'm going to be speaking about a story that took place in the summer of 2011. I know this because my younger daughter was born in August of that year. At the time, I had been staying with Ernie Grillo on a daily basis. And Ernie was not in the good graces of the Gambino family back then because he was on a shelf. What's funny is, at the time I had run into Blaze Carrazzo, and he had said, "I know why you're staying around Ernie. You're hoping he could get you straightened out." I told him that wasn't true. The reason why I was staying with Ernie was because he was my friend. Let me just state for the record, if you have hopes of getting straightened out, the last person you want to latch onto is somebody that's on a shelf. Presently, Ernie's a Gambino captain, and obviously he was taken off the shelf. But back then, the both of us didn't know that that would take place. So while he was living life as a civilian, he had a kitchen and bathroom restoration company called Patriot, and he was importing olive oil and canned tomatoes from Italy. In fact, the tomatoes were very good. They were San Marzano tomatoes. Ernie had been keeping the tomatoes and the olive oil in a warehouse that belonged to Casali Tile. Casali Tile was a tile store on Staten Island owned by Benny Casali, who was a Gambino associate. And Ernie completely took over this guy's warehouse. And he would also take cases of tile for his business and never pay the guy. Why didn't Benny Casali, as a Gambino associate, go and complain about this? I have no idea. But I think the answer is that he didn't know that Ernie was stealing the tile. I had mentioned to Ernie that my brother was involved in real estate. And of course, he told me, ask your brother if he knows anyone that needs work done. So the next time I see my brother, I did ask him. He told me that he just sold a house in New Jersey to an executive of Anheuser-Busch. As I'm sure most people know, they're a brewing company out of St. Louis who produce beers such as Budweiser, Michelob, Stella, etc. My brother set up a date where Ernie and I could go meet this guy at his house. So on that day, we showed up at the house in New Jersey and we met my brother and the owner of the house. Ernie was definitely not used to dealing with legitimate people, especially an executive for Anheuser-Busch. I remember that day, Ernie was rough around the edges, and even my brother mentioned it to me later that night. He said, "You know, your friend Ernie can't come off like a gangster when he's dealing with potential customers." So the deal was, this guy needed his kitchen renovated, and if Ernie got the job, he would cut me in on the profit. Ernie said that since it was a tile job, he was going to use Benny Casali's guys. About 2 weeks went by, and I didn't hear anything else about the job. I figured the guy didn't want to hire Ernie. On the day my youngest daughter was to be born, I was at the doctor's office in Staten Island with her mother. While I was there, I received a call from my brother congratulating me. I thought he was congratulating me on the upcoming birth of my daughter. But he told me he was at his client's house and Ernie's guys were there working. Ernie had all Spanish guys working for him, so I asked my brother if they were Spanish. He told me no, the two guys that were working were black. So I told him he must be mistaken because all Ernie's workers were Spanish, plus Ernie never mentioned that he got the job. But my brother said that he asked one of the guys if he worked for Ernie, and the guy said no, he works for Casali Tile, but that Ernie got them the job. So I told my brother I got to get off the phone, and I immediately called Ernie. I repeated what my brother just told me, and he tells me, "A black guy? That's Benny's guy Lenny, and he must have stole the job from us." Now, I know Ernie very well. Not only were we together every day, but I was away with him in prison. If a guy in fact stole money from him, he would not nonchalantly be saying, "Oh, that's Benny's guy and he must have stole the job from us." So I get off the phone with Ernie, and that night my youngest daughter was born. But the next day I call Ernie up again and I asked him if he spoke to Benny Casali. And he told me, yeah, Benny fired the guy. I guess he figured by telling me the guy got fired, that would put this to rest. So it was either that day or the following day, I take a ride to Casali Tile and I park where I could see the work vans going in and out. So after a while watching their parking lot, this one van pulls up and a black guy gets out. And he's carrying a brown folder, and on the front of the folder is the name Lenny. Obviously, Benny Casali didn't fire this guy Lenny, and as I said, Ernie never expected me to go lay on Casali's tile. I drove straight to Ernie's house. He lived on Kingsley Avenue in Staten Island. It was an old two-family house, and he had the whole entire house rented. On the second floor hallway of this house, there was a big closet, and Ernie turned it into a living space. He had a loft bed, a shower stall, a small toilet and sink, and a little college dorm refrigerator. I remember when he showed it to me, he asked me what I thought of it. I told him it looks like the best prison cell I've ever seen. He was laughing with me, but he said, why should I miss out on collecting another rent? Ernie had a crazy mentality. Even after doing all that time, he literally put himself in another cell just to make another dollar. So I go unannounced to his house that day, and he was surprised to see me. I told him I seen the guy Lenny at Casale Tile, and I made it like Benny was running a game on us. But the whole time I knew it was really Ernie. I told him, Ernie, as soon as I seen this guy Lenny pull up, I knew Benny sent him to steal the job. So he said, Benny's always firing this guy, and then he hires him back. So I told him, I'm going to go back to Casale Tile tomorrow, and I'm going to grab this guy Lenny, and I'm going to tell him he owes me $3,500 for my end of that job. He said, no, you can't do that. I said, why not? I'm not going to let the guy rob me. He had a worried look on his face. He said, you can't do it because it's going to cause trouble between Benny and me, and I have all my olive oil and my tomatoes by him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. If Benny really robbed him, he'd be going to Casale Tile to tell Benny that he had a new partner in the tile business. At that point, I just let it go. For me, it wasn't about the money anymore. It was a lesson learned. It would be 2 years later that I was inducted into the Lucchese crime family. As I've mentioned before, once you're inducted, old beefs die that day. You can't use your membership with a family to get old revenge. In my dealings with Ernie as members in that life, I never brought the incident back up. As I've stated, at that point, Ernie would be taken off the shelf. But as far as doing business went, I always kept it in the back of my head that I couldn't trust Ernie. But that's just how that life goes. I hope everybody had a happy holidays. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please remember to hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you could do that as well. If you think friends and family may have interest in the video, please share it and thank you. I wish you all a good night, and I'll catch you on the next one. You can subscribe to the Sit Down News blog at sitdownnews.com, and I appreciate everyone who has subscribed. Thank you. Well, just another example in the mob you never knew about. If you would like to subscribe to this channel, you could do so down below. If you would like to subscribe to my other channel, Unlimited Substance Podcast, I'll add a link in the description to this video.